son svegliato, oh bella ciao, 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 ciao. Una mattina mi son svegliato ed ho trovato l'invaso.
Tu m'as tant donné, j'attends ton retour. Oh bella ciao, 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 ciao. J'ai beau chanter, mais j'attends toujours que tu reviennes, oh mon amour.
Continue sans toi, tu vas m'en vouloir. Oh bella ciao, 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 ciao. Oui, je l'ai fait pour toi, je t'en prie pardonne-moi. À contre-cœur, oh bella ciao. La 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 la, la 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 la. Oh bella ciao, 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 ciao. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la.
Je t'envoie mes mots de là où je suis. Oh bella ciao, 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 ciao. Quand tous les efforts, tous les écrits n'ont plus de sens, n'ont plus de prix.
J'ai crié ma peine, mon poing sur les murs. Oh bella ciao.
Okay, welcome everybody to this session of HIV 2020 online. I just need to go through, before we start, I need to go through a few housekeeping rules before we begin. And just ask you to be patient as well, because although we've practiced this, we've had some technical issues and we're still working through them, and it's a learning process for all of us really. So please choose your audio channel for the language of your choice by selecting interpretation and then the language, and then mute the original audio to only hear the interpreter in your group. Okay. Okay. So there's some participation guidelines that we have to and want you to adhere to. And I'll read out the English ones. So HIV 2020 online sessions, we're here to offer a safe and neutral space for sharing of knowledge, experience, skills, and opinions in what we hope will be a mutually respectful manner. So that basically means no swearing in the chat, no rude comments, just respect to everybody, please. And HIV 2020 online also operates a zero tolerance policy for any kind of bullying or harassment, abusive use of language, aggressive expression of opinions, or any other undesirable behaviors, and you will be removed, just to be clear. And that includes any activity during the Zoom session or on HIV 2020 online social media platforms, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, that may cause distress to the panelists, the speakers, the translators, or any other participants. And the session participants who engage in such actions, like I said, will be immediately removed from the session with no prior notice, and you won't be allowed back. And also, unfortunately for you, I guess, we can't have questions. There is so many people registered and participating in this. We don't have time within 2 hours to have questions because, you know, to be honest, this was a whole day session originally planned, and we've had to reimagine it into a 2-hour session, and there just simply isn't time for questions, unfortunately. Okay, so now you have me. So I just want to set the session up really, what we're going to look at. You know, a time when key populations, communities, us, are facing increased opposition from conservative states, when our spaces on global, regional, national platforms are being hijacked by those who want to speak for us. And when our resources and our funding is being for our program.
Recursos e financiamento para os nossos programas.
No, somebody needs to be muted there. And I'm just going to do that. Sorry. Yeah, when our funding for our programs is also under threat. And of course, there's the continuing criminalization of us as key populations. So perhaps it's time that we looked again at how we connect between national movements and regional and global advocacy. Sort of moving away from the linear structure that we have at the moment into a more integrated circular approach that will not only amplify our voices, but increase our connection, shall we say. So we're going to look at this through the lens of people who use drugs and sex workers. But this question that we're going to look at in this session applies across all key populations, not just people who use drugs and sex workers. And this basically, to reimagine this situation, is what this session is going to try and achieve. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and I'm going to introduce the first of our 5 speakers. Because I'll tell you the structure of the session. We'll have 5 speakers. It will be split by a piece of music, and then you will go into breakout groups, but we'll get to that because there's been some technical problems with that. And at the end of the session, we're going to continue this by developing what we hope will be a smart guide and a process for taking the outcome from this session onwards. So it's not just a talking shop, so it actually means something. So, having said all that, the first speaker I want to introduce you to is Judy Chang. Judy is the Executive Director of the International Network of People Who Use Drugs, and I'm very happy to hand over to Judy. Judy.
Just turning on. Hi, everyone. So thanks for the introduction, Mick. So just to explain what Input is, we're the global peak body representing people who use drugs. So we're a member-based network with 9 members made up of the 8 regional networks of people who use drugs, as well as the international network of women who use drugs. So it's through these national networks that we also maintain connections with the local and national levels as well, and networks of people who use drugs. Across multiple countries, including Kenya, Tanzania,
Tanzânia ou alguma outra.
India and Mexico.
Também no México.
So just to explain a bit about the rationale behind our global advocacy. So this can basically be traced back to our founding document, which is the 2006 Vancouver Declaration. And so this was written and developed collectively by drug user activists from all around the world. And we outline then the reasons for why the world needs a global network of people who use drugs. And we committed to reclaim the right to be our own spokespersons, striving for self-representation and self-empowerment. And we would do this through collective action, working to fight to change existing local, national, regional, and international drug laws, and to formulate a drug policy that's based on evidence that respects people's human rights and dignity, instead of one fueled on moralism, stereotypes, and lies. So really linking the global to the local has always been part of the fabric and part of the DNA of what we do. So as a global network, how we put this into practice is to work to synthesize and amplify the demands, voices, and perspectives of people who use drugs from all around the world. And we work to influence the global juggernaut of decision-making on HIV, also hepatitis C, and of course, global drug policy. And without this global collectivization of people who use drugs, we know that the decision-making at the global level would be entirely disconnected from lived realities, from our lived realities. And this would render policymaking useless or harms. So the ways in which we approach our work is to ensure that, and what's really important is to ensure that there's a constant flow of information and communication from the grassroots to the global, but as Mick said, you know, back again as well. It's like a cycle. And we strive for this cycle of decision making to be constantly informed, sometimes through disruption, sometimes through amplifying key messages, informed by communities of people who use drugs. So I would describe our global advocacy as having 4 key elements. So the first would be that we make sure that we're actively participating in the global advocacy spaces. So for input, these spaces are the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, the UN AIDS, and the Global Fund Board. And what we do there is to monitor and watchdog policy making and bring regional and national voices to the table. So in 2019, people who use drugs across 7 regions gathered at the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. And 2019 was the year that the 2009 Political Declaration on Drugs expired. So it's really important for us to be there. And so, you know, we were there as a community speaking on high-level panels, protesting, and also finding creative ways to basically disrupt the current global narrative on drugs. So secondly, what we do is we work to improve documents. One example of this in 2018 was at Input, along with regional networks. We blocked the release of the WHO and UNODC international standards for the treatment of drug use disorders. And we successfully advocated for the removal of stigmatizing, pejorative language about drug use and people who use drugs, as well as discriminatory practices. We pushed back against having drug dependency defined as a brain disease, which was an original document, because we know that this definition is used by President Duterte in the Philippines to justify extrajudicial killings of people who use drugs. So I think it's important, you know, as drug user advocates, we're always going to be more sensitive to how institutional decision-making translates on the ground. And this isn't, as we know, isn't always for the good. On the other hand, we also collaborate with UN agencies such as UNODC, WHO, UNAIDS, and we did this in co-developing the I Do It, which is the Injecting Drug Users Implementation Tool. And this was a way for us to institutionalize what we want. So meaningful community involvement and rights affirming health services. Thirdly, what we do is translate what's happening in global spaces into plain, accessible language. And we do this through delivering workshops, trainings, and also producing technical briefs, such as the one we did on universal health coverage. So what these community authored approaches do is we're able to cut through the technical jargon, able to explain what the implications are or may be, and also identify leverage points of where, you know, we can use some of these processes. We conduct trainings on the I Do It and Global Fund processes so that communities are better able to navigate and negotiate with decision makers at the national level. Fourthly, we produce position papers and statements, and we always endeavour to make sure that they're informed by community consultations. Some examples of some of our documents are papers on the Portugal decriminalisation model, PrEP, and long-acting depot buprenorphine. So by producing these papers, we're able to get community perspectives on policy developments and new biomedical tools into the public domain, and we can counter top-down knowledge making and creation and be able to, you know, create an evidence base that is grounded in people's lives. Just to outline some of the impacts we've seen is the introduction of buprenorphine into some countries following trainings of the I Do It, having our documents acknowledged by parliamentarians, and also being able to influence treatment decisions in some countries. So for us, it is really important to stay connected to communities. We did stand with a Kenyan network of people who use drugs when they also connected with the Key Population Platform in country to push back against government pushing of biometrics on the communities. And we linked with headquarter UN agencies to be able to provide some technical support as well. So I think, Mick outlined some of the challenges that we are facing in the current environment, the shrinking civil society space, reduced funding and increased competition that this generates. But, in this context, it's more vital than ever that communities do stay connected at all levels so that we can amplify each other's work. Social movements work when there is strategic flows of information. And as global advocacy networks, what we do is we push for and monitor change at the global level, are able to relay this to communities at working at the national level so that they can hold their governments accountable to the global commitments that their governments have made. But sometimes I think, especially recently, there's been a kind of tendency to attribute value to kind of one side, for example, more than the other global, but this is really a political red herring. It's like asking, which body part or which arm is more important. Really, in reality, they work best in tandem and together. So we really do need all pieces of the puzzle, local, national, regional, and global, to be able to affect long-term change. Of course, as a global community, we have different experiences, and this is based on class, race, and nationality, gender identity, and sexuality. And we have to acknowledge this diversity, but also we need to recognize and acknowledge, which we do, that we face the same challenges: criminalization, stigma and discrimination, lack of funding, and dismissal generally of our voices and perspectives. So just in closing, to truly shift the paradigm, we need a shift in thinking. We need to be able to, and get everybody else to center communities. We need a shift in power. Communities need to be, in the driver's seat and having the reins. And of course, we need a shift in practice. So we need funding and we need real, genuine institutional backing. So just 3 words that we've been asked to summarize. So my 3 words in summarizing our work, or how I see our work, is connection, collectivism, and solidarity. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. So you've heard now that that's the first of our speakers who have spoken about the global aspect. The second speaker, who I'm very happy to introduce, is Ernesto Cortez, who is the coordinator of the Latin American network of people who use drugs. And Ernesto is going to give a regional perspective. So I'm happy to hand over to you, Ernesto.
Okay, thank you very much, Mick, Judy, everyone here. So good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Ernesto Cortez. I'm a member from LAMPUD, from Costa Rica in Central America. And so just to start a little bit talking about what's LAMPUD, the Latin American and Caribbean network of people who use drugs. This network was founded in 2009, and we had our first assembly in 2011 in Salvador de Bahia in Brazil. This assembly produced the Salvador, or the manifesto from El Salvador that was presented. We had a nice meeting over there in that time. And the next assembly we had was in 2015 in Santa Marta, Colombia, that produced the letter of Taganga, that it's a small fisher town or tourist town in the Santa Marta coast. And this letter was looking towards the 2016 United Assembly Special Session on Drugs, the UNGAS on Drugs of 2016. So our network, it's based on the principles of self-determination, equity and social justice. And we look ourselves as a reference or support our regional level to influence, promote, and change drug policies and cultural paradigms that eliminate stigma, discrimination, and criminalization for people who use psychoactive substances. We also aim to have an active and meaningful participation for people who use drugs in the public policies, in the design of these policies, in the implementation and the evaluation, both at the national, a regional, and a global level. At the end, our basic aim is that people who use drugs in Latin America and the Caribbean enjoy the same rights and opportunities as anyone else. So that's why LAMPED is a peer-run organization, and we promote values and principles such as unity, equality, inclusion, friendship, collaboration, understanding, and mutual respect. Also sharing information and having the will to change the current situation faced by people who use drugs in our region. At this moment, we have members from 17 different countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we face these, we speak several languages in the region, mainly Spanish and Portuguese. So we're starting also to address the diversity we have on the Caribbean islands. We have English, French, and even Dutch. So we're dealing with those issues at the moment, as most of our members speak Spanish and Portuguese. So we also are part of, recently, since last year, we're also part of a regional grant, a Global Fund grant. And we're working with 9 other regional networks of people living with HIV and other key populations. And this is an important moment in our history. It's the first time Global Drug User Network and organization it's working as part of the Global Fund grant in the HIV response in the region. So even though LAMPED, it's almost 10 years old, it's more than 10 years old, it's 11 years old, drug users haven't really been part of and participated in the regional and national HIV responses in the region. In fact, there's only a few local drug user organizations in Latin America, and only in a couple of countries there have been funding for harm reduction interventions. The reasons that this occurs are several reasons. Now, the first one is that we have to acknowledge that Latin America and the Caribbean is one of the most unequal and violent regions in the whole world, but also that drug use and drug production has a long history and traditions in our region, mainly in the last few decades. We have become also a region where every substance that we call illegal is produced and distributed. And this has also made that the war on drugs have taken a great toll and has fueled these violence and inequities. That's why in many countries in our region, drug use and drug possession, it's criminalized and is harshly and disproportionately punished. Many countries has long time sentences for low-level drug offenses, and this aggravates and it's more visible among women, poor people, Black people, and key populations. The second problem we have seen and we experience is how harm reduction funding has focused mainly on people who inject drugs, not drug users in general. And that's a real problem because most of our members don't inject drugs. And it's not a common practice in the region at all. Thirdly, some countries and some areas where heroin is produced or close to the United States border or big cities, but it's not common that people inject drugs, and we don't have an opioid crisis either. So this focus on harm reduction only on the way of administering the substance has also ignored how these harsh drug policies that criminalize drug use and drug possessions are barriers to the access of health services and medication. And in this way, the HIV response will never take place or be access to every drug user, as many drug users are denied these services and medication because of the use. So this has definitely limited our participation as a community in the construction and implementation of HIV responses, but has also made us an invisible community among other key populations. Because at the end, people living with HIV, trans women, men that have sex with men, or sex workers, there are also drug users among these populations. And in fact, among several of these populations, mainly trans women and MSM, sex workers, drug use, it has a high prevalence if you compare it with the rest of population. But what we have seen and what we are trying to build up and make the evidence, because there's not many data in our region, is to understand how the drug user stigma also affects other key population, and also means how the practices in the health services and social services stigmatizes and push us away because we use drugs. Or in many countries, we have seen that the treatment is conditioned to abstinence-based treatment or compulsory treatment in horrible places that are not really health oriented, and it's more punishing and harsh treatment that doesn't work. So at the end, what we have seen how harm reduction has developed in Latin America, it's a perspective that goes beyond substance use, and how care is focused on people, recognizing their vulnerability, their diversity, citizenship rights, and harm reduction at the end. It's what I think in Latin America, and what I've seen and talked with my peers, it's more a political stance than a health or social intervention. So it is really important to understand that it's not only, that we should not only focus on the way people use drugs. It's important, definitely, but it's more on how governments protect and guarantee our human rights as drug users. This COVID pandemic has made it more visible, the stigma and criminalization we live in. There's more police in the streets, there's less people in the streets, so we have heard and seen that drug users are more criminalized. And how the drug war, it's embedded in our governments and culture. This is really difficult to change, and it's gonna take a long time. We hope less time now, that we're part of a bigger movement. As I said, we're part of this Global Fund grant from an alliance of positive leadership, ALEP in Spanish. And this is really important for us because it's the first time we have been recognized as a key population in the region. We're not part of many of the national country mechanisms to deal with the Global Fund as drug users. We have never been recognized, and this is the time to us, and it's helping us to put in the table that we are a key population, that drug users has to be addressed. The drug user stigma, it's a really important issue to understand, and how to build up a united front to change drug policies and guarantee human rights of people who use drugs in Latin America and the Caribbean. And that's why my 3 words, I talked with my fellow peers in Lampert, and our 3 words are users, participation, and peace. So I'm ending right here. Just to, if you would like to know more about Lampert, we have our website. It's called redlampert.net, redlampud.net. and anything else, we'll be around if you need our help. Thank you very much.
So we've heard global and we've heard regional. And now we're going to hear a national perspective from Felista Abdallah, who is the national coordinator of the Kenyan Network of Sex Workers, KESWA. And Felista just had problems connecting, so she's only just joined. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce Felista Abdallah to you, and over to you, Felista. Felista.
Hi, Mick Matthews. I'm having challenges joining because of my internet connection, but I can still try. Or maybe we can have someone else speak, then I can speak later.
So we were going to hear about the national perspective before we moved to Ruth Morgan-Thomas, who is the coordinator, the global coordinator of the Global Network of Sex Work Projects, who was going to bring us back to global. But I think because of the problems that Felista's having, we'll move on to Ruth and and come back to and see how Felista is after that. So over to you, Ruth.
Okay, so hello everyone and welcome again to HIV 2020. For those of you that don't know NSWP, we were founded in 1992. We launched actually at the International AIDS Conference in Amsterdam in that year. And since then, as a group of sex workers, activists, academics, we've been a thorn in many people's sides. I think our voice has always resounded very loudly, particularly around the HIV arena. But in 2006, we had an organizational review, and we changed from being a very informal alliance of individuals, of organizations, of academics, into a network of organizations, member organizations who are sex worker led. And today we have 285 member organizations across 84 countries, I think. I'm sure my team will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's our current membership. We're organized over 5 regions, and we chose 5 because we have a regionally elected governing body, which each region independently elect their representatives to our board, and we have a globally elected president. So our purpose of being NSWP and configured the way we are now is to actually uphold the voices of sex workers across the world and to actually connect our regional networks. I think it's very challenging for a global network to be just individuals around the world. And so we chose, and our members chose, that we would actually look at working through the regional networks in terms of supporting and building capacity at a national level. And I think we've grown considerably from then. I think in terms of our advocacy, I think one of the approaches that we have, and I want to talk about our approach and not necessarily about the issues, but global advocacy for us is on behalf of a community. It's about our collective voice. It's not about an individual's voice or opinion. It's about we and not me. It's about us and not I. It's about building a consensus on core values and principles that can be endorsed by all of our members, so we speak with one voice. But at the same time, allowing our members to hold other positions outside of the common core values and principles and to pursue them. So it's not about limiting people's voices, but it's about saying, here is where our common ground is. Here we speak with one voice. Sorry, my camera just went off for a minute there. We're having lots of technical glitches today. My apologies. And so I think that what we have done over the last 10 years since we became this membership organization, we've developed a process that enables us to ensure that we amplify the voices of our communities across the world. We're closing the circle, is how I like to describe it, between national, regional, and global advocacy and movement building, because our global advocacy and the strength of that advocacy is what supports both national, regional, as well as global movements. I think one of the things that we're probably a little bit unpopular, maybe say, with people is that for us, when we engage in global policy and program forums and platforms, we're committed to ensuring that sex workers in all our diversity, across the genders, across the intersections that Ernesto spoke about, are actually represented, and that we have geographic representation from each of the regions. That means we place quite a heavy demand, if you like, on those spaces for our community. But we are diverse, as are all the key populations. We intersect with one another, and we have common issues as well as unique issues from the different populations. I think for us, it's important that that diversity and intersectionality within our communities, as well as across the cultures and legal frameworks, are actually considered when we are talking about sex work. We are incredibly diverse as a community. So I think our main issues are around reducing our vulnerability to human rights abuses, to poor health outcomes, including HIV, but not limited to HIV, because our poor health outcomes across a range of health issues. And our health inequalities are really quite severe compared to the general population. Oh, we're back again with the camera. So the approach allows us to have experienced sex worker advocates who mentor emerging, but not always young sex worker leaders. Our aim is to build a vibrant, sustainable, resilient, and powerful movement at national, regional, and global levels. We develop a range of advocacy tools, from briefing papers, which take us about 9 months to produce, that involves us hiring a community consultant to run the global consulting with our members, and 10 national consultants who do in-depth case studies. It gives us a really good documentation of the lived experiences of our communities across the diverse nature of our community, as well as geographic. I think in terms of the member in countries that we identify, those are identified by the regional networks. And that for us is really important, that we work through those regional networks and that we as a global secretariat don't just pick the countries that we know best. Okay, we're going to try and start my video again. It keeps on switching itself off for some reason, so my apologies when you hear a voice out of the dark. But as I was saying, we work through our regional networks to identify countries that it's very important that we highlight the issues of, and that they then are featured in our policy briefs. We also produce smart sex worker guides, and we've been doing that since 2010. These are guides which are about ensuring our community has the knowledge and the information to inform their advocacy and to make it strong and powerful to make change. I think for us it's important that in these documents, both our SMART guide and our briefing paper, we document both the good and the bad. We document the good practices of our community where we've really had an impact. And then we document the lessons that we've learned and things that we perhaps don't want to do again. Our advocacy tools are aimed at strengthening the national movements and actually building capacity of communities to use the evidence from across the world and the lived experiences of our communities to actually argue for the change that they need at local and national level. And I think that that is something that is absolutely essential if we're going to close this circle and stop the questioning of what good does global advocacy do? Because global advocacy comes from the national level. It comes from the grassroots. If you're not informed by the grassroots, by your communities in all their diversity, your global advocacy is meaningless. And we believe in giving voice to our community as a priority ahead of those that wish to speak about us. So my 3 words are communities, lived realities, and amplify. And I think that that is the job of global advocacy for all of us. And people need to give space to those of us who have those lived experiences. Back to you, Mick.
Thank you, Ruth. And sorry about the technical problem we had. So,
it's okay, I'm back on camera now, and I hate cameras, so.
Felista, how are you? How's it working with you now?
I regret to say I have a WhatsApp message from her saying that the video is really bad and the connection is very poor, but she's still trying. Okay. Is there any chance of music? Hasta siempre was meant to be giving us a...
Aprendimos a quererte desde la histórica altura donde el sol de tu bravura le puso cerco a la muerte. Aquí se quedará clara la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Es que pues no me olvida cambiar esto.
Yeah, that piece of music was Hasta Siempre, if anybody's interested, was Hasta Siempre by a singer called Soledad. I can't remember her second name, actually. Soledad, anyway, but the song is Hasta Siempre, and it is about Che Guevara. So, Felista, how are things now? I'm very happy to introduce Ms. Felista Abdallah from Keswa, who will talk about a national perspective from the Kenya Sex Worker Alliance. Over to you, Felista. Good to see you.
Thank you, Nick. My name is Felista Abdallah. I'm the national coordinator of the Kenyan Sex Workers Alliance. Today, I am happy because it is a community initiative. And I'm happy to be working at a national level. Why? Because I have the capacity. I know how to engage. I know where to say yes and where to say no at the same time. I want to give an example of, there was a time we were taken to India to go and learn. And it was too complicated for us to understand how to implement or to run programs in our own country. And we were like, how do we do that? And we have not even gone to the university. So NSWP had support, capacity building support. And as the global network, they decided to take us to go and learn from the Indians movement because they had started an academy. This is Ashodaya and VAMP. Then when we came back to give feedbacks, we decided that what we learned was too important, but we thought our cultures were different from theirs. Our problems were somehow the same, but we felt like we could do better as African sex workers, as Kenyan sex workers. So when we came back as the Kenyan sex workers, we demanded a lot from the global network. First, we said, we want you to give capacity to our regional network so that it can be able to help us implement this capacity in different countries. And that is how the African Sex Workers Academy started. And then next, what we decided is that we wanted to build our Kenyan movement to be strong, and we made it to be very strong. And today we had started like with 3 members. Today we have 75 members nationally, and 50% of our members are either funded locally or regionally. At least we have some support that are going to our groups. We are happy because we had a global network that came to us into the grassroots to make sure that we implement that capacity, to make sure that we have a clear understanding, to make sure that we have all the knowledge. Today, I want to tell you one of the success stories we have in Kenya. Sex workers are doing it better. Why? Because we have sex workers-led clinics, we have sex workers-led organizations that are employing doctors and nurses, we have sex workers-led economic empowerment processes. Why? Because we took this in a serious way and we knew this is something that we can do. And because people kept on saying, since sex workers, their level of knowledge is low, it's going to be complicated for them to be able to implement these things. But once we were given an opportunity, we grabbed it and we made sure that this is an opportunity we are running away with, and we made a difference. Today, I want to tell you that sex workers-led organizations that are implementers in Kenya are actually reaching the high numbers than even the implementing partners. I want to talk about the bar hostesses. I want to talk about Hoimas. I want to talk about the soap ambassadors. I want to talk about survivors. I want to talk about Kiswa. I want to talk about Koswa, Iaswa. So everywhere you go in Kenya, even where we have religious powers, where they're like telling people not to speak about it, we are able to talk. Why? Because this leadership is actually taken down once I was empowered, once Madenge was empowered, once Doti was empowered, and all the leaders who were given empowered through NSWP. It came to the African Sex Workers Alliance. Then we took it down to our local people because we did not forget where we are coming from. And this is what is making it to be more strong. This is what is making it to make more sense with our members. And today, even when it comes to responding to violence, we see sex workers respond to their violences wherever they are. They do not need Felistas to go. They do not need Madenge to speak on their behalf because of the knowledge that they have gotten through the Sex Workers Academy of Africa, through the organizational level internship when the finance person from NSWP is coming to giving us, when maybe ASWA has that is taking it to the regional level, to their grassroots organization. This is the knowledge that we have taken to our community members. Today, I do not want to say we are perfect in Kenya, but one of the things I would like to emphasize, or one of the challenges, is the fact that we think we can do much more better. If we are given an opportunity to implement grants, for example, like the Global Fund, grants, for example, like the PEFA is very complicated for us because of all those things we have to sign. We are not ready. But if donors can actually come out and say, we want to support community initiatives directly, this is going to be very important, because most of the time we as communities are left out because of the word capacity. And we have always had UNAIDS, Global Fund, and everyone saying, leaving nobody behind. But most of the time we are left behind because of, oh, your capacity is not yet ready, or because of this and that. If we as the Kenyan sex workers have done it, then it means you can also do it. I want to take my appreciations and say unity works. Visibility works. Because if you come out and tell the people who you are, what you want, we came out as an aggressive way. We didn't know how to communicate, but we were given an opportunity to communicate by NSWP. They gave us the right training. This has been happening through the Sex Workers Academy in Africa, and the Global Network is always there to give in their input in each and every training that we hold. We do not take anybody's support by granted. We love it because the community are doing it themselves. And for this, I want to say any community person can do it. And this is the reason why we have come out very strongly with a new slogan by saying, the sex workers do it better. If you do it, then you will do it better, because you belong to a community that has done it, and we can always keep on doing it. So thank you very much, Mick.
Thank you, Felista. Always fabulous. So we've heard the national, we've heard the regional, we've heard two ends of the global, but there's one more piece to join up the circle that we can't ignore, and that's money, and that's donors. So to give us a donor's perspective I'm very pleased to introduce David Traynor. David is sometimes the senior policy advisor at the Global Fund. Sometimes he has other roles, but anyway, that's David, and David will talk to us from a donor perspective. So over to you, David.
Thanks so much, Mick. Can everybody see me, hear me? Thanks for the introduction, Mick. I'm never quite sure how to come after Felicita at all, or Ruth.
Yeah, David's is trying to present from Morocco, and I think the internet is not very stable for him at the moment.
Aprendimos a quererte desde la histórica altura donde el sol de tu bravura le puso cerco a la muerte. Aquí se quedará clara la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what to do now. So I think expecting David not to come back, because it seems like his internet has failed completely. What we'll do, we'll think about setting up the group work unless David comes in while I'm talking.
Can I make just so he's got his phone and he's just WhatsApp me going duck duck fuck. Okay.
I suspect that means he's not going to be.
It's entirely dropped, and I don't think he's talking about anything other than the internet.
No, I'm sure.
His sincere apologies. He's going to try and get back. So maybe we can set up the group work.
Yeah.
See.
Okay.
I'll let you know if he gets connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right. So what we were going to do was have the 5 speakers, and then we were going to ask you to go into breakout groups, or we are going to ask you to go into some breakout groups and do a piece of work to build a word cloud. And the purpose of the breakout groups is to reflect. You will have in your groups, you will have a slide displaying 15 words from each of the speakers, 3 words from each, that define the organization's approach to linkages between global, regional, national advocacy, and movement building. And then the idea is for you in your groups to create a series of word clouds, which will be the basis for, after this session and later on over the next couple of weeks, we'll do an analysis of the word clouds, and from those word clouds, develop a sort of smart guide around the issues we've been talking about, and also develop a process to continue it, to take it on, so that you know that this isn't just a talking shop. What you'll be asked to do, there'll be 5 language groups, and some of you will have been pre-assigned to those language groups already. So there'll be Russian, Portuguese, Spanish, French, and English. And you'll have been assigned to those groups based on your language preference. You will each have, and there'll be an English group, and we're not sure now whether we'll do an English group in plenary or whether you'll have your own group or groups, because we were told about something only 20 minutes before the workshop started that screwed things up, basically. So you'll have to bear with us on that one. But you'll each have a moderator assigned who is going to speak in your own language. And Rachel, the conference coordinator, will manage the transition from the main meeting into the breakout groups. Once you're assigned to a group, you'll need to click on Join Group. That will then enter you into the breakout group itself. And then your moderator will explain what I'm going through now, and they will explain it again. And then again, in your group, your moderator will share a screen to display the 15 words in your language in a word cloud. And then the moderator will ask you to go on your laptop to menti.com. And menti.com will then will take you to a page after you've put in a code that you will have at the top of the slide that they're showing you. After you've put that 6-digit code in, you will then be directed to a page that will allow you to enter 3 words. You can either use 3 words from the 15 words that are being displayed, or you can choose to use different words or any combination of the 2. So after entering those, you will be able to see the word cloud forming on your screen. And should you wish to leave the breakout group and rejoin the main meeting, then you just click on Leave the Group and you will join the main meeting. We were going to have a video showing, but because I'm not sure how many groups we got now, I'm not sure if that's going to be working or not at the moment. So you'll have to bear with me on that. So it seems David will not be getting back anytime soon.
He's still trying, Mick, but the internet's not back on, so I'm getting texts from him.
Yeah. I suspect we should...
So can I make a suggestion that he'll keep on trying and he can join us at the conclusions once we've done the group work?
Yeah, I think we should go into the group work now.
And we're going to do the same exercise with you as is being done in the breakout groups.
So don't worry if you've not been assigned, unless you've been assigned to the wrong language group.
And we're just going to give people a few minutes to settle down in their language groups, hopefully. I was going to talk earlier, now, and we'll not have an awkward silence because we can't get music just now, about the flyer and the picture in the flyer that we put out for this event. It's a photograph that was taken in 2018 in the Amsterdam conference. It's part of the protest that's been ongoing from all of the global networks. And it was the point at which they decided to light a positive flame to give to San Francisco during the closing plenary. And we felt that it was extremely inappropriate for them to want to light the global flame, this positive flame, in the global village, where we as the global networks of gay, bisexual men, other men who have sex with men, people who use drugs, trans people, and sex workers, and people from the Middle East in particular, but also from some Latin American countries, were going to be excluded. It didn't seem to be a very positive flame for us. And so that picture comes from the protest we had at the lighting of the positive flame in the Global Village in Amsterdam, 2018. There are drug users, there are people from the Middle East, there are gay men, there are bisexual men and women, lesbians. In that photograph, it was very carefully chosen by Mick to make sure that we had good representation. And Judy Chang is in the foreground of it.
How are we doing,
now,
Rachel?
do we know?
How are we doing?
Nick, I think.
Okay. So we will start, and people can join in this English word cloud, because I'm about to hopefully share my screen. So for those of you that can see, I hope you can all see, this is the word cloud of the 15 words that the 5 panelists were asked to come up with before, that define our approach to global, regional, national advocacy and movement building. Just so you know, Mr. Trainer, who didn't join us, I'm afraid, the words that he chose are accountability, political challenge, and power from the Global Fund. So, for those of you that have never used word cloud before, what we're asking you to do is to consider the words that have been presented by the panelists and decide individually if you agree with them, or whether or not you want to choose 3 different words, or maybe 1 different word and 2 of the panelists' words. Really up to you. But you should consider what you've heard from all of the panelists in deciding the words that you want to use. Participants should go to menti.com, and you can see at the top of the screen www.menti.com, and there's a code. If you go to that and you enter the code on the page that you land on, you will then be taken to another page when you hit submit, to a page that allows you to enter 3 words. And you can see that people are already starting to enter words, and we will see this cloud develop as more of you go to that menti.com and enter your 3 words, and this will grow and will be used for us to try and really form a smart guide, I think is what we're going to call it, on what does global, regional, national advocacy and movement building look like for us as communities? What do we need? It was quite pretty seeing all the words move around.
Yeah.
Because we had set this up so that the breakout groups would return to plenary and watch a video, but because there were some technical issues with Zoom's breakout groups, I'm afraid we're in the plenary pattern. And so what you're going to see is the word cloud develop and just shift about as it becomes bigger. I do believe that the words that are the largest are the words that more people are choosing. So the size of the words depend on how many people have used those words. And you can see how many people have contributed above the little man at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. So once you've submitted your words, I'm afraid we're just going to have to watch and wait as all of the other group members add to our word cloud. And then at the end, and Mick, I haven't been keeping an eye on the clock, but when the 15 minutes for this exercise is up, the other breakout groups will come back and join us. And we will get to see the word clouds that they have created. And the interpreters that are online will translate the French, the Russian, the Portuguese, and the Spanish for us so that we know the words that have been chosen by our colleagues who are speaking those languages.
Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 quand tous les efforts, tous les écrits n'ont plus de sens, n'ont plus de prix.
J'ai crié ma peine, mon poing sur les murs. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Crier que je t'aime, briser mon armure, l'âme qui pleure mais le cœur dur.
La 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 la, la 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 la. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Oh partigiano, portami via, che mi sento di morire. La 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 la, la 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 la.
Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la.
La 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 la, la 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 la. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la.
So, great. Is everybody back now? Who's going to come back? Okay, so thank you everybody for participating in that. I hope it went all right in your groups. I don't know what's happening to the, here we are. Right, back again. So, can we display the Portuguese group? Here we come. Okay, so there wasn't many words added. Was there not many?
Yeah, there are only 2 people in the group.
Okay. Okay. Well, there's none that stand out from this, so there's not much I can say about this one. We'll just include all the words. We'll get it translated. And can you remember what words were added?
Visibility,
okay.
Accountability, which is prestação de contas, and visibility, and I think amplify. Yeah, these were the 3 words that we added.
Thank you. Okay. Can we look at the next one then? Can we look at the first Spanish one, please? Rachel?
Sure. That will be Ernesto. Ernesto?
Give me a second. I'll share mine. Put it in presentation.
So Ernesto is on the screen. You don't have to share it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So what's empoderamiento? What's that mean?
Empowering. Empowerment, yes.
Empowerment. And visibilidad is visibility.
Exactly.
Right? And unidad is what? Unity.
Exactly.
And those seem to be the three biggest words on your...
Yes. There's also a lot of several participation. The thing is, it has a tilde. I don't know how to say it in English. So the way you write it might change. And some people added another word to participation as juvenil. So it's youth participation, for example, or communitary participation also.
Comunitario or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
From what I see.
That's cool. That's great. Thank you. The second Spanish group, which is
Veronica.
Veronica's. We've got different words this time. So amplify is amplificar, I presume. What's derechos? Or is it, I don't know if that's the right word.
Rights.
Rights, yes.
Okay. And visibilidad is visibility. And also activism and community look to also be well supported from there. And also responsibility up the top. Okay. So the Russian slide, please. Now, Eliza, you're really going to have to help me with this one.
Maybe you would like to try to interpret. So, yeah, there have been only 2 of us in the group, so not so many, like, and 2 of us chosen like different words. So basically we have участие, which is participation. We have solidarность, it's solidarity. Сообщество, community. Политический вызов, political challenge, прозрачность, which is visibility. So these are like 5, I don't know, top words.
That's all right. It was worth hearing your Russian accent because I loved it. So thank you very much. And the French one, please.
Okay. I have participation and visibility. And as far as I can see, there's a third one, but I can't figure out exactly which is a new word. I have 16 words if I count correctly. Yeah, but I can't trace it really. Solidarity, no.
Reality?
This is lived reality.
Lived reality.
It's already there in the list.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, but still, visibility and participation is it's fine. It's what we want. The first English one, I don't know whose one that will be. Who's Kim, perhaps, or this one's a bit easier for me to read. So we have empowerment and communities. Live reality and obviously accountability and I love this. And
Nick, I traced it. It was typed differently. It's lived reality. Yeah, it occurs. It shows 2 times. So participation, visibility, and lived reality from French group.
Super. Thanks, Felling. And then we have amplify, participation, and accountability all on the similar level. Empowerment, communities, and live reality in the first English one. Can we move to the second English one? Sorry, I've got flies. Okay, this one clearly communities stands out. Partnership, and then participation and accountability again. Live reality up on the right-hand side there. So that's cool. Then, is there another English one, or is it now the plenary one?
It's another English one.
Yeah. Okay. So here we have solidarity, collectivism, and inclusive. And they're clearly the outstanding words from this word cloud. And then I think the final one is the plenary one, I think, is it? No?
Nope.
No, there's another English one. Oh, well, there was a lot of English speakers. So solidarity, accountability, and visibility are the three biggest, with lived reality, participation, communities, also, and partnership also fairly prominent. And then the final one, I think, is the
plenary one, which I need to share. So Rachel needs to give me permission, if that's okay.
Ruth, just click share. It should show up.
Yep. Okay. So there you go, Mick. That's the one that was done in the plenary.
Yeah. And as soon as that's it, that goes. So we have on this one, we have obviously solidarity, inclusion, accountability, and communities and unity are all fairly outstanding, with lived realities, open-minded, connection, visibility, also fairly similar in terms of support that people had. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. And to let you know, these will all be, we've recorded them all, and they will be collected, and we will analyze them as best we can, and give a lot more thought to them, and the thought that you've put into giving the words to produce, well, like Ruth said, what we're calling at the moment a smart guide. And then we are considering setting up a process where we can plan and perhaps strategize what we can do with what you've contributed to and what our speakers have contributed to think about a different way of, or ways of improving how we link global, regional, national advocacy and movement building. So, unless, I presume David's not back yet.
So David's lost all connections for the web, including on his phone. So he's now texting me still. So okay. No, we're not going to get him back, I think, today or this week.
So we still have a little bit of time.
Yep.
So what I'd like to do is go back to our speakers in the same order that you presented in, and ask our speakers to respond to what key message do you take away from what we've done this afternoon, or if you wish, if you wish, add 3 more words to what we've already got. And I'd like to start with Judy, if possible.
Okay, I might.
You wasn't expecting that, was you?
Yeah, so I guess, after listening to all the speakers, like what, really came out of all the talks, and upon reflection about the links between global, regional and national, local, also is important of really listening and learning from each other. And that even, when we're giving technical advice and support, that it's also that we're there to learn as well. And in that, being able to do that means we're able to strengthen our advocacy. So I think, that's why, this conference, HIV 2020, sorry, I've been asked to start my video, so I've been forced to. That's why this conference, I think, is so important for us, and why it's, I guess, a beautiful thing for us to really be able to have the space to come together and share all the lessons that we've learned over decades of advocacy work, and also being able to listen to each other and learn from each other as well.
Thank you, Judy. Now, Ernesto, what key message do you take away from this?
Key message, okay, would be a lot of key messages, I think. I think that the certain words really resonate, like unity, for example, thinking ourselves as a united movement, and how this tags, let's say we have been putting as drug users or sex workers or trans women or whatever we, I don't know, tag ourselves or categorize ourselves. It's more focused on how we do advocacy and how we change the situations and the how criminalizations affect us, all of us. And it doesn't matter where we come from. So Ruth said also how we should work as a united voice, as a whole group, and I think that's the way forward. Definitely, there's no possibility to make a big change or a definite change if we don't work together, if we don't unite as a goal, as a whole community from different communities. I don't know. That's just coming out of my head, I think.
That's fine. That's where we want it to come from.
Thanks, and gracias, everyone.
Thank you. So, Felista, I'll go back. I'm going back to the original order, actually.
I regret to say she's not online, I don't think.
Felista dropped off. Okay. Over to you then.
Oh, and I'm being forced to start my video again too. Hi, everyone. So I think from this, we should all take the message that Ernesto's just given us. We aren't silos of people who are defined by labels. We are intersectional, we are diverse, and we are powerful. And I think that we need to speak truth to power. And I think that the words that we've come up with today in these word clouds are really powerful words that we need to turn into our words, our collective words, and find a way forward together, because I do think together we will win, actually, our rights, which are ours. We just need to get our governments to actually respect them.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ruth. Okay. So that brings us pretty much, as we come to the end of this, thank you. Thank you for being patient, everybody. I can only apologize about the technical issues. Sometimes you just have to live with it, and there's not a lot you can do. We did practice this session and a few times, but sometimes you can't beat technology. So thank you for staying with it. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you continue to log on to other HIV 2020 sessions. This was the first one, so if anything was going to go wrong, it was going to be this one. So yeah, and I think we do have a final piece of music, if we can get it, Rachel, if that's possible. Thank you, everybody.
Somebody keep telling me don't hang hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Lord, there've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Bye, everyone.